There are a series of bills popping up in a bunch of states that would criminalize and repress protests of all types. And this is really chilling, red alert, authoritarian type stuff. In Nashville, Tennessee, lawmakers have put together a bill, 8005, that's Senate bill and House bill 8005, already passed the legislature, would make it a Class E felony to camp on state or public property between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Now, what's the idea there? The idea is have carte blanche, have a blank slate to go after protests that will occupy a plaza for some time or a park for some time. Once 10 p.m. comes, Class C felony, start arresting everybody. They are threatening convictions punishable by up to 6 years in prison and the possible loss of your voting rights. It makes it easier to charge protesters with theft if they mark up state buildings with chalk. A Michigan bill will classify rioting as terrorism. Now, what's the problem there? The line on rioting is in and of itself up for debate. This would make anything that you can call rioting, even if it's not, terrorism. It would make acts of, quote, social and domestic anarchy punishable by up to 20 years in prison or a $250,000 fine. In South Dakota, the governor signed into law stricter penalties for rioting and inciting a riot. Now, inciting a riot is pernicious since animated protesting could conceivably look like it incited someone to start rioting. And that's a really broad catch-all that is being applied there. In Louisiana, there's a bill on the table which could mean 15 years in prison for protesting, quote, on critical infrastructure. What's the idea there? To repress protests near a pipeline that residents in Louisiana oppose. Now, there are many more examples. More than 20 states over the last couple of years have proposed some of these types of bills. The idea is sometimes to criminalize homelessness. Sometimes it's to criminalize protesting. Other times it's to restrict speech in practice, although they claim that's not what they're doing in theory. And this is the stuff that reminds us why we need to vote at every level. It's not just presidential, but we need state senates, state legislatures, governorships, because those are the origins of a lot of these bills. And those are people choosing many of the state judges that might eventually decide on the legality of some of these authoritarian restrictions on protesting. Authoritarianism really does not like protesting. We know that from history. Now, I think it's also important to remember that this is not just about new laws. You can weaponize existing laws as well, which is why we need the right mayors and police chiefs in place. Mayors often choosing police chiefs because they can take advantage of existing curfew laws. They can focus on unlawful assembly angles, on gatherings, and on and on. So it's not just about state legislatures, state senates, and governors. We need the right mayors. We need to push them to select the right police chiefs. This is much more than the presidency. By the way, it's also really weird and, of course, completely hypocritical that many of the same people stockpiling weapons in case the government were to become tyrannical are in support of laws cracking down on unarmed protesters and are saying, well, if the gatherings are against the law, these protesters should find some other way to request redress of their grievances. What? Things are completely backwards, of course, and this is just the latest. We have a voicemail number. That number is 2192 David P. Here's an interesting question about a word I've been using lately. Take a listen.